2011 was an interesting year, and it was an interesting year that gave us a very interesting cult classic 80s remake. Hello everybody, welcome back to Meddling in Antiquity. My name's Teray, and today we're going to be talking about 2011's Fright Night remake. Before I get into my thoughts about the remake, I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown of what it actually is. So the 2011 film is a direct remake of the, I believe, 1985 film of the exact same name. The original film starring Chris Sarandon, who most people will know as Prince Humperdinck from Princess Bride. However, the remake takes the same story and does a couple things a little differently with it. The remake came out in 2011 and stars the late Anton, who I miss very much, as the lead character Charlie Brewer. Toni Collette plays his mother. Our villain is played by none other than Colin Farrell. And we have Peter Vincent, played astoundingly by David Tennant. So it is a story about this young man, Charlie Brewster, my apologies, who he lives in this neighborhood in Las Vegas in the remake, and he comes to the realization that the man who just moved in next door is in fact a vampire. And through that there's a series of extremely campy and wacky things that happen as he's trying to convince the people around him that he's telling the truth, and how to save his family and his girlfriend Amy from this vampire. So now that I've given a bit of a very brief overview of what exactly this is, let's get into the film itself. Okay, so I get my facial expressions made out of indicated that I actually really enjoy the Fright Night remake, but I do. It's really fun. It's kind of one of those movies because it's from that very brief, like the 2 to 3 year period from like 2010 to 2013, where modern directors were trying to take traditional like 70s camp styles and 70s and 80s camp and bring it back, because we got a lot of remakes about things from like the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s in that time period, and they were all very campy because we had Fright Night, and then followed by the next year Tim Burton's Dark Shadows remake, which I will be talking about in a different video. But the interesting thing about those movies is that the camp, it's not even really an interesting thing. It's just a thing that happens when you try to take traditional camp and make it more modern. It doesn't translate well because modern audiences who haven't spent a lot of time watching traditionally campy things like the original Fright Night or Rocky Horror Picture Show or the original Dark Shadows and those traditional sitcoms that were campy and weird, and to translate those for modern audiences oftentimes falls through, which is why things like the Fright Night remake and why Dark Shadows the next year fell through, because modern camp for mainstream audiences does not translate well. However, the film itself is really entertaining to watch. I mean, the cast is phenomenal. I mean, I love Toni Collette. I've talked about that before in my Velvet Goldmine video. Anton is incredible and consistently plays characters that are at least half his age, seeing as he plays a 17-year-old in his mid to late 20s in Fright Night. No, he was already in his 30s by that time, because Anton just looked super young all the time. And then you have David Tennant wearing leather pants the whole movie, which is hilarious. And David Tennant is funny. He's a really funny person, and I have talked about that in my Good Omens video. And obviously Colin Farrell is a phenomenal villain at anything. I mean, if you've seen him most recently in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, you'll know that man can play a villain like nobody's business. And that's just how it should be. And in this, he is no less entertaining, but it's a chance for him to be a more exciting, more campy, more kind of fun villain, I suppose, is the best way I can put it. But he is a really fun villain to watch in this particular film. Because one of the things I say very often is that a good cast will always make the film, the TV show, the whatever. And I've talked about that in my past 2 serial scrutiny videos about Gotham and Once Upon a Time, and the same is very true for films. This film has a phenomenal cast that truly does make the movie. Just those major cast members alone are kind of the tipping point that makes me enjoy the movie so much, because they play these characters so well. And they don't take themselves too seriously in the roles, especially David Tennant as Peter Vincent. Honestly, his performance is one of the standouts in the film. His and Colin Farrell's are the 2 best in the whole thing. I really do believe that. And it is because David Tennant is so irreverent about playing this character, and it makes it so fun to watch, and to watch his struggles back and forth. I mean, even the funniest moments are really funny, but the serious moments are also kind of a little bit funny. And the same thing with Colin Farrell. He just has these weird one-liners, and he's wearing the exact same thing every time, and he's always eating an apple. So it's kind of, he has those character quirks, and those character quirks make those characters really interesting and funny to watch throughout the course of the film. I mean, honestly, the biggest issue with the film, and I think the reason why they never were able to do a sequel about Jerry, Colin Farrell's character's sister Regine, is because they injected it with just enough camp for modern audiences to think it was just a bad movie, as opposed to just a modern camp film, which is what a lot of horror movies and horror remakes especially tend to be. They often tend to have a bit of the campy spirit of the original story. And like I mentioned, modern audiences oftentimes do not understand camp, which honestly I think is just a failing in modern audiences in general, because everyone should understand camp. It's fun. But that's the biggest flaw in the film, is that it was just enough on the campy side to where modern audiences didn't connect with it like audiences in the 80s connected to the original film. But they did update it to make it more modern. It has a killer soundtrack, which the only thing I'm irritated about with the soundtrack is that Hugo's 99 Problems did not get more screen time, because that song slaps. It's only in the end credits, and it sucks. But if you haven't listened to that, go check it out. It's fantastic. But Fright Night overall is a really good movie, and the cast makes the film. The changes that they made to the storyline also make it connect a little bit better to modern audiences, and I think it's really interesting. And changing the setting to Las Vegas gave them a lot of room to play, which I also think was a bit of a missed opportunity, because I don't think they really played with the setting as much as they really could have in the film. If they had, I think it would have made it a bit more interesting and made up for that campiness that a lot of the audience tends to misconstrue as just bad filmmaking and bad script writing. But other than that, it's a good movie if you want something fun to watch, because it's well, you should have already started watching Halloween movies like end of last month. It's end of August when I'm recording this, August 23rd. Yeah, August 23rd when I'm recording this. You won't get it till the 26th, but you should have started watching Halloween movies in July, like I did every year. But truly, it's a good movie. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into final thoughts. Fright Night is a good movie. It may not seem like it because of how campy it is, and because a lot of people's brains are just, and especially nowadays, modern audiences misconstrue camp as just being a bad movie. Not true. Two things are very different. You can have a campy movie that's extremely good, Rocky Horror, or a campy movie that is extremely bad. I don't know any campy movies that are bad. They're just funny. I mean, but it's one of those movies where it is a remake. So, I mean, you can watch the original or don't. It's still a fun movie to watch on its own, even if you don't compare and contrast it to the original film. It's a fun movie to just as a standalone. It's entertaining, it's got a great cast, and it's got a killer soundtrack, and it's just really fun. It's a fun movie. And it's a fun, if you're not like a strict horror person and you're looking for something entertaining and goofy and kind of silly to watch on Halloween, like for your Halloween movie binge, Fright Night should be on your list, the remake at least, because it is a really fun movie. It's not heavy on the gore, and it's just entertaining. It keeps you entertained. If you're a David Tennant fan, you're gonna love it, obviously. And I mean, David Tennant fans will just eat up anything he's in anyway, so it doesn't really matter what he's in. They'll watch it. You'll watch it. I'll watch it too. I didn't even watch him as the Doctor. I just like David Tennant. I think he's just funny. But it's a good movie. And like I said, if you're not into major gore for Halloween movies, then Fright Night should definitely be on your list, because there's really not a lot of bloodshed at all. There's barely any like strict blood showing at all in the film, which if you're also sensitive to bloody things, then that's super good for you, right? Fabulous. So I think that about wraps us up for this episode of One-Off Wonders, and I will see everybody on Sunday for Socio-Political Smackdown. Bye.